Good morning. It's time for Civics 101, and today's lesson is how a bill becomes a law. So in our country, we have a basic legislative process that starts similarly across the country. The only exception is Nebraska, which has a unicameral house. One house. They don't have a house in the Senate like most states do. They just simply have a Congress or a legislature. So in most states, in order for a bill to become a law, you can follow this image if you'd like to. I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see it in a minute. But basically, it starts out with an issue from a constituent or a representative or a senator that wants something done and put into place. Sometimes a government agency will come to the representative or the senator and say, please put this bill forward. It helps us do our work. And so they craft the bill, and it starts out in the House of Origin. Right? That is either the United States Senate, the United States Congress, the state house, right? So it starts out in one of those houses of origin. And then it has to have sponsors, it has to be written, and it's usually put in to the process through the hopper. And so you put a bill into the hopper, okay? At that point, it gets assigned to the House of Origin. Okay, and to the committee of origin. So every bill has to go through a committee. Sometimes bills have to go through 3 committees or even more committees, depending on what the impact is. Sometimes it starts out in subcommittees to actually reach the higher committee, right? And so a case of a simple bill starts in a committee and it gets voted out of committee onto the floor or onto the next committee. If it has money attached to it, sometimes it has to go through appropriations outside of the committee of origin, right? But remember, we're in the House of Origin, the committee of origin. It gets passed out of the committee onto the floor. And then if it is met with all of the standards that are acceptable and the rules are such, though, that the speaker can pull a bill to the floor or it gets moved to the floor by the chairman of the committee, but action on the floor in the House of Origin has to take place in order for it to pass. So it must be passed in the House of Origin and transferred to the other house. So then it gets transferred to the Senate committee, and the Senate actually gets transferred to the Senate as a whole. The Senate assigns it to a committee, and we start the process all over again, right? And so it has to be passed by a committee on the Senate side to go to the full Senate, and then it gets passed by the full Senate. If it has amendments, it has to go back to the House of Origin to have the amendments accepted, and then it comes to then it goes through the entire process. Right now, at any step along the way, amendments can be applied by a vote of the majority. Like if a majority says we want to put this amendment on it, the amendment gets put onto the place. If it gets put onto the Senate, it has to go back to the House to be passed as it is. So this is the overwhelming process. Now there's one more thing in this whole scape. This whole issue is the calendar. So the calendar of a legislature dictates by when things have to move, right? So if you have a bill in the House in the originating House, if it is still in the originating House by the cutoff date on the calendar, it is dead. It cannot move without special action. And it only gets special action if it's a big issue that multiple people want, right? So if it doesn't move by the time the committee of origin is cut off, then it's dead for the year. It's dead until the next legislative cycle, right? That's why this is so difficult. And when you hear a bill has been introduced, don't freak out. There is still a significant process, and not every bill introduced gets a hearing. Not every bill introduced goes through the process, but it's important to know how the process works. I hope this is helpful. Keep asking me questions.